But now Daniel looked at them again. The sky was covered with gray clouds as Daniel Harper slowly walked through the
I miss
quiet
you,
cemetery.
Ethan.
The
It's been
wind
so
moved
long.
softly through the tall
I'll never
trees,
forget.
creating a lonely whisper in the air. Daniel, one of the richest businessmen in the country, visited this place every month. Despite his enormous wealth, luxurious houses, and powerful connections, there was one thing money could never bring back: his only son, Ethan. 2 years earlier, Ethan had died in a terrible car accident. The tragedy had shattered Daniel's life. Ethan was not just his son, he was his pride, his future, and the person who would have inherited his entire empire. Since that day, Daniel felt a constant emptiness inside his heart. Every visit to the grave felt like reopening an old wound. Daniel finally stopped in front of a black marble headstone. The name engraved on it read, "Ethan Harper, beloved son." Beneath the name were the dates marking his short life. Daniel stood silently, staring at the letters as if hoping they would somehow change. He placed a bouquet of white lilies beside the grave. "I miss you, son," he whispered quietly, just as he was about to step back. Daniel noticed something unusual a few feet away. Two little girls were kneeling in front of Ethan's grave. They looked almost identical. Clearly twins, both had long, dark hair tied into small ponytails, and they wore simple, slightly worn clothes. In their tiny hands, they held a small bunch of wildflowers. Daniel frowned in confusion. The cemetery was usually empty at this hour. He had never seen these girls before. More importantly, they seemed deeply focused on Ethan's grave, as if they had come there for a very personal reason. Daniel quietly stepped closer, careful not to disturb them. The twins had their hands folded together as they whispered a soft prayer. Their voices were gentle but full of emotion. "Please take care of our daddy," one of the girls said quietly. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. "Our daddy." He stood frozen, unable to believe what he had just heard. The other twin added softly, "We miss him every day." Daniel felt a strange chill run through his body. Ethan had never mentioned having children. In fact, Daniel was certain his son had never been married. Confused and curious, Daniel slowly approached them. "Excuse me, girls," he said gently. The twins turned around at the same time. Their innocent eyes looked up at the tall, well-dressed man standing before them. For a moment, Daniel felt something strange. The girls' eyes, their smiles. There was something familiar about them. "Why are you praying at this grave?" Daniel asked softly. One of the twins looked back at the headstone and then back at Daniel. "Because our daddy is here?" she said. Daniel felt his breath stop. "Your daddy?" he asked, his voice barely steady. The second girl nodded and pointed at the name on the grave. "Ethan Harper," she said softly. "That's our father." Daniel's heart began pounding loudly in his chest. 1,000 thoughts raced through his mind. This couldn't be possible. But something about the girls, their faces, their eyes, made his fear grow stronger. Daniel slowly knelt beside them. His hands trembling, he had come to visit his son's grave, as he always did, but he had no idea that this ordinary visit was about to reveal a secret that would change his life forever. Daniel remained kneeling beside the twins, his mind spinning with confusion. The quiet cemetery suddenly felt heavy, as if the air itself was pressing down on him. He stared at the girls carefully, trying to understand what he had just heard. "Girls," Daniel said gently, trying to keep his voice calm, "why do you say Ethan Harper is your father?" The twins looked at each other for a moment, as if deciding who should answer first. Finally, one of them spoke. "Our mom told us," she said simply. Daniel felt his chest tighten. "Your mother?" he asked. The other girl nodded. "Yes, she always said our daddy was a very kind man, but he died before we could meet him." Daniel swallowed hard. None of this made sense to him. Ethan had always been open with him, or at least Daniel had believed so if his son had children. How could he possibly hide something so important? "What is your mother's name?" Daniel asked carefully. "Her name was Lily." The first twin answered the name struck Daniel like a distant memory. Lily, it sounded familiar, but he couldn't place it yet. "Did your mother ever show you a picture of your father?" Daniel asked. Both girls immediately nodded. One of them reached into the small pocket of her worn sweater and carefully pulled out a folded photograph. She handled it gently as if it were the most valuable thing she owned. "This is our daddy," she said, handing the picture to Daniel. Daniel's hands trembled as he took the photo. The moment he looked at it, his heart nearly stopped. It was Ethan. The picture showed his son standing beside a young woman with long, Brown hair, Ethan's arm was wrapped protectively around her shoulders, and both of them were smiling with pure happiness. The woman's hand rested on her stomach, which looked slightly round. She was clearly pregnant. Daniel felt dizzy. This wasn't just any picture. This was proof Ethan had been expecting a child. No two children. Daniel looked up at the twins again. Studying their faces more closely, now the resemblance suddenly became impossible to ignore. Their eyes had the same deep shape as Ethan's. Even their smiles reminded him of his son when he was young. A heavy silence filled the air. "My mom told us Daddy loved us very much," one of the girls said softly, "but he never got to see us." Daniel's heart ached at her words. "What happened to your mother?" he asked quietly. The twins lowered their heads. "She got very sick," the second girl whispered. "She died last month." Daniel felt like the ground beneath him had disappeared. "So you came here alone?" he asked in disbelief. The girls nodded. "Mom told us that if anything ever happened to her, we should always come here to pray for Daddy," one twin explained. Daniel looked at the grave again. The black marble stone now felt like it carried far more than just Ethan's memory. It held years of secrets, hidden pain, and a truth Daniel had never known. Suddenly, another memory rushed into his mind. Years ago, Ethan had once argued with him about a woman he loved. The poor woman Daniel had refused to accept. Daniel's heart began to pound harder, slowly, painfully. The pieces of the past were beginning to come together, and Daniel was starting to realize that his own decisions might have caused everything. Daniel's hands trembled as he continued holding the photograph. His eyes remained fixed on Ethan's smiling face in the picture. But now, the memory behind that smile came rushing back with painful clarity. Years ago, Ethan had stood in Daniel's office, nervously trying to explain something important. "Dad, I love her," Ethan had said. Daniel could still remember his own cold response that day. The woman Ethan loved was Lily, a simple girl from a poor family. She worked at a small cafe near Ethan's university. To Ethan, she was kind, caring, and genuine, but to Daniel, she was completely unacceptable. Daniel had spent his entire life building a powerful business empire. In his mind, Ethan's future wife needed to come from wealth. Status and influence. Lily had none of those things. "I didn't raise you to throw your life away." Daniel had told him firmly. Ethan had tried to argue, "Dad, money isn't everything," but Daniel had refused to listen. He had threatened to cut Ethan off from the family business and inheritance if he continued seeing Lily. After weeks of arguments and pressure, Ethan had finally given in. At least that's what Daniel believed at the time. Now standing beside the grave, Daniel realized the truth. Ethan had never truly left Lily. Looking at the twins in front of him, Daniel felt a deep wave of guilt crash over him. His own pride had forced Ethan to hide his love and his children. The twins stood quietly beside him, unaware of the storm of regret building inside the old man. "Our mom said Daddy was very brave," one of the girls said softly. Daniel felt tears forming in his eyes. "What are your names?" he asked gently. "I'm Emma," the first twin said. "And I'm Ella," the second added with a shy smile. Daniel looked at them again, and this time he didn't just see two strangers. He saw his son's blood, his own granddaughter's. "And you said your mother passed away last month?" Daniel asked quietly. The girls nodded. "We live in a small apartment now. Emma explained our neighbor helps us sometimes." Daniel's heart sank even deeper. His granddaughters had been living alone, struggling to survive. While he continued his life surrounded by unimaginable wealth, tears finally rolled down Daniel's face without thinking. He slowly collapsed onto his knees beside Ethan's grave. "I'm sorry, son," he whispered, his voice breaking. The twins looked at him with confusion. Daniel gently pulled them closer and wrapped his arms around both of them for a moment. The three of them remained there in silence beside the grave. Emma looked up at him curiously. "Why are you crying, mister?" she asked. Daniel took a deep breath. Trying to steady himself then, he looked into their innocent eyes and said the words he never imagined he would say. "Because I'm your grandfather." The twins' eyes widened in surprise. Daniel wiped his tears and held their hands tightly. "I made a terrible mistake a long time ago," he said softly, "but I promise you something today." The girls waited quietly. "You will never be alone again." For the first time in years, Daniel felt something different in his heart. Not just pain, but a chance for redemption and a family he never knew he still had.